Good morning, evening, afternoon, whatever it is when you're watching this. I don't think I have anyone watching at this specific moment. As always, Candy the Wonder Pup, who I will take care of so that I can have peace to talk about what I want to talk about. So give me a paw, shake a paw, shake a paw. There you go, lay down. Sweet, there you go. And come up. And there she is. And that should give me peace. Oh my gosh, I have someone watching. If it's Punk My Video, if it's whoever, Hot Mess Mom, and they're gone. Someone came on and came off. Anyway, Gordon Causey is always coming to you right now. I'm live, and it is the 21st of June at 1:20 in the morning. June 21st, the first official day of summer, sometimes otherwise referred to as the summer solstice. This is the longest day of the year in terms of sunlight. This is the day we will get more sun than any other day of the year. And that's a nice thing. The downside is that each day subsequent, the sun will be going down earlier and earlier, coming up later and later with each day. And I guess it's on or about September 21st is referred to as the fall equinox. And at that point, on that day, there will be 12 hours of sunlight, 12 hours of darkness, and then the hours of darkness overcome. There's more hours of dark than there are of light. So happy summer, everyone. I've titled this video something about culture wars and talking about focusing in on 4 areas. There are more. And I just wanted to give voice to some of the thoughts that I've been having. This is as much for myself as anyone else. This is completely unscripted. All I have are the 4. I wrote down my 4 little points, one being COVID or anything related to health, but primarily COVID, gender and pride type issues, climate change, and finally war, specifically the war between Russia and Ukraine. And I think how you feel about any one of these 4 things is there's a way that we are programmed to think and to feel about any one of these issues and more, but I don't want this video to go on for 3 hours, so I'll keep to 4. I'll lay it out. If you supported all the mandates and all the measures and viewed anything and everything being done to combat COVID, if you thought everything that was done was justified and made sense, and even if in retrospect things turned out to have been wrong, you're okay with that because it was warranted because of the gravity of the situation. If you believe that everything that was done in the name of COVID was done either properly or with the best of intentions to keep everyone safe, you're on side with what you are supposed to believe. As regards gender and gender identity, if you believe that gender is a societal construct, that the way a person feels, that a man can be born into a woman's body and vice versa. And I think we're up to darn near 100 different identities now. And if you're on side with that, and if you think that makes sense, well, then you're good. Again, you're good. As regards climate change, if you think that everything and anything that can be done should be done to combat climate change, because the future is bleak if we don't do anything. If you believe that, you're good. And with respect to the war in between Russia and Ukraine, if you're view the Ukraine that anything and everything must be done to support Ukraine, and that Ukraine are the good guys and Russia are the bad guys, and that we countries like Canada, the United States, the Western world, that we have to do everything we can to support the Ukrainians to help them in their fight with Russia, well, then again, you're good. And I view these four as something of a litmus test. And I imagine that a very good chunk of the population is on side with all four of those things. They believe that everything that all the mandates and restrictions and everything that was done in the name of COVID was justified. Believe that gender is nothing more than a societal construct, and that an individual's how an individual identifies should supersede anything else. That everything and anything must be done to support the Ukraine over Russia, and that the climate that we're rendering this planet unlivable. Well, I'm going to say, if you believe all those things, you might as well shut my video off right now, because what I want to speak to is those people who are not on side with any or all of those. And I think we're in a distinct minority, and it's an unsettling feeling, because we're living through very much a transitionary phase. The Western world, for my lifetime and going back, has been a bastion of free speech, freedom of expression, liberty. And now to run counter, to have a counter view on any or all of those, it's an unsettling feeling, because there is such a pervasive sense of what is the right opinion to have and what is the wrong opinion to have. And if you're running counter to what I'm going to call the approved narrative, if you have criticisms, if you question things related to our response to COVID, that's you're swimming against the stream. And that stream, it's always existed in our societies. In Canadian society, there's always been a cultural norm, and to swim against has always been uncomfortable. But now it's an Orwellian dystopian feeling if you're going counter. And I think what's happened with a lot of people is because the media, our government officials, social media, which has become incredibly powerful, and with the tools now available with AI, with bots, with algorithms to drive content, you're bombarded with the impression that this is the accepted view. And God help you if you stray outside of the accepted view. And right now, at this juncture, you're still relatively safe. You will probably be gaslit. You'll probably be subject to derision for expressing your opinions on any one of those four. My goodness, God, if you're an unvaccinated person, now things are okay, in the sense that most Canadians, if you go to Health Canada's website, you'll see that the last I checked, it was over 85% of Canadians are not up to date on their COVID vaccinations. According to the health officials in Canada, if you haven't had a shot within the last 6 months, well, then you need to make an appointment, go and get yourself up to date. And most Canadians have tapped out on the vaccines, on the COVID shots. They've said no, even though there's a 15 to 20% of the population, total population, who didn't get any shots. But now it's actually about 85%. I actually think it's over 85% who have tapped out and haven't had a shot within the last 6 months and are ignoring the advice of Canada's public health officials and of Health Canada itself. But because so many, that one, but people will still defend their decision and say they made the right decision, that it was that getting jabbed was the right move, because based on what we knew at the time. When it comes to this gender stuff, it takes in today's world, it takes cojones, it takes brass balls to stand up and say, no, there are two genders, because you're going to be gaslit, you're going to be labeled, you're going to be put into a camp, you're going to be accused of being a MAGA hat wearing, uneducated, science denying troglodyte, because you hold to the notion that there's male and there's female. And even myself, in holding to that, I will allow that there is something called intersex, where instead of being XX or XY, there's a chromosomal anomaly, and things got the chromosomes aren't XX or XY. I've read, I'm not an expert, little disclaimer, verify anything I say, and I welcome corrections. But from what I've read, I think it's 0.02 or 0.03, less than 0.1% of individuals are actually intersex, where they're, for example, from what I understand, it's an incredibly rare condition, but I understand that it can happen, where an individual has the chromosomes are XX, meaning they're female, but they have the genitalia of a male. And so it's not just, their chromosomes don't fully line up. I'm not a geneticist, but I understand that this does happen in very rare occasions. But what I'm talking about is an XX female gender identifying as male, or conversely an XY male saying, well, I was born in the wrong body. There was a mistake made. And now broader society has to acknowledge this. Climate, God help you if you don't believe that CO2 or carbon is the big bad boogeyman that's going to destroy the planet. I've been reading about climate disasters not my entire life, but close. I mean, it started in the late 70s and it's continued on. It's just getting more heightened now. And then, the war that's going on between Russia and Ukraine. God help you if you are. I'm ambivalent on it. I don't support either side. War sucks. There are no winners. Everyone's a loser, and both sides lie. The Russians are lying, the Ukrainians, and we're lying. Ukraine and her allies are lying. The Russians are lying. Pick your liar. CBC News ran an article well before the Russian went into. I don't want to get into it. There are sections of Ukraine that have largely ethnic Russian populations, and there was some Minsk Accord that the Russians accused the Ukrainians of not living up to, and so the Russians portray themselves as being liberators and fighting for the rights of these ethnic Russians who they say were being oppressed by Ukrainian authorities in violation of this what they call this Minsk Accord. I don't care. I do not care. War, a pox on both their houses is my view. I mean, what I was getting at was that even before that happened, even before the conflict started, Canada's own CBC, government-funded media, had reported that about concerns regarding the very real presence of Nazi elements within Ukraine's military. And they were reporting on this. And now all of a sudden it's fake news and conspiratorial. You don't know what to believe anymore. And all I want to say to those, especially to those who are offside on all four of these issues like I am, there's a bigger agenda at play. Klaus Schwab has admitted as much during the G20 summit that was recently held in Bali back in November of 2022. He told a gathering there that we can expect more Black Swan events. And so now what we have is these culture wars, and people are being herded into two camps, and there's a good camp and there's a bad camp. And if you're a good little citizen, and this is the way authoritarian regimes work, doesn't matter whether it was Franco's Spain, Mao's China, Soviet-era Russia, and of course as well in Nazi Germany, there's a right way to think and a wrong way to think. And as regards COVID and the mandates and measures and the vaccine passport and everything, those are all good. If you're all on side with everything that was done, the distancing, the stay in your bubble, the no meeting with anyone outside of your bubble, and gatherings limited to 5 people, or whatever the insanity we went through for 2+ years. If you were all on side with that, if you were scared to death of the big bad coronavirus and scared of anyone else not complying, you're good. You're in the good side. From our authoritarian masters, they're putting you in the good camp. If you believe gender, these are just issues that they're using to separate us into good and bad. Good in their eyes. Are you obedient to your master? Are you going to go along with whatever we say? And if you're willing to go along, with the health mandates, and if you're willing to go along with this idea that a man can be a woman and a woman can be a man, if you're willing to go along with that, and if you're willing to go along with paying more for everything in the name of, if we increase taxes, the weather will be gooder. To quote, it's Ralph Wiggum's take on science and economics. If you're on side with that, and if you're on side and you've got your Ukrainian flag flying outside your house, or you have that Blockbuster video colors, corporate colors on your social media accounts, you're good to go. You're good to go. You're in the good camp. And I wonder to what degree people are just going along to get along. I think there are a lot of people who look at this gender stuff and they say, Really? But I better keep it quiet. I better not speak up because there seems to. I don't want to swim against the stream. I don't want to go against the herd. I'll get run over. Doesn't affect me personally. I'll just let it go. So what if the kid? So what if kids are being, you know, exposed to sexually explicit material in public school? Oh well, doesn't affect me. Climate, we're bombarded with it. This idea that we've been hearing since 2000 that the polar ice cap is going to completely melt next year, next 5 years, next 7 years. Just keeps getting pushed further and further out. In 2000, there were climatologists in Britain predicting that in a few short years, that children will not know what snow is. And then this past winter, kids were tobogganing and building snowmen in Galveston, Texas. And the war in Ukraine. And I just want to let people know, if anyone sees this, if you're not on side with any of those or all of them, it's okay. Doesn't mean you're crazy. Doesn't mean you're an uneducated troglodyte. You're allowed to think otherwise. The way we're being herded now is everyone's being instructed, and we're being put into camps. And we've got Barack Obama now suggesting a digital fingerprint to combat misinformation. Who decides what is information and what is misinformation? Our government overlords will tell us what is information and what is misinformation. I always I think back to, there's a movie called The Great Escape. Very famous movie, starred Steve McQueen, James Garner, Peter Lawton, I think, and another, Charles Bronson. A bunch of A-listers from Hollywood's golden era, or maybe just after the golden era. And I think they're all dead now. Steve McQueen's dead. James Garner's dead. I think Charles Bronson is dead too. Charles Lawton, certainly. But great stars, and it's about based on a true story about an escape that took place in a prisoner of war camp in Nazi Germany. And there's a scene in it with James Garner, and he plays an American pilot who was shot down. He's in this camp, and he is an extortionist and a blackmailer. And that, I don't want to go into the whole movie, but basically the Germans had taken all the escape artists, those who had been in their prisoner of war camps and had attempted numerous escapes, and they took all their bad eggs and put them into one basket, with their commandant saying, we put all our rotten eggs in one basket and we intend to watch this basket very closely. So they had everything they needed to launch a mass escape, which is what they did. And Henley, James Garner's character, his specialty is a scrounger and an extortionist and a blackmailer. And there's a great little exchange between him and one of the prison guards whose name is Werner. And Werner and he become something of friends. Henley, the American, starts giving him cigarettes to ingratiate himself. And then he pickpockets him and steals all his papers. And now he's got something on him, because if the commandant was to find out that he lost his papers, that could mean he would be sent to the Russian front, where the mortality rate was very high. You had a very good chance of dying. And so being a prison guard is a bit of a sweet gig for a Nazi soldier. And so now Werner is in his debt. And anyway, I'm sorry for digressing so much. This little exchange that goes on between Werner and this Henley. And Werner asks the American, he says, "Why do you fight for your enemies, the British?" And Henley says, "Oh, that's just propaganda." And Werner says, "I read it. I read it." And that's the way most people react now. Most of us don't have degrees in virology, epidemiology, immunology, or any other medical field. We certainly don't have PhDs in gender studies or genetics. We're not climatologists, meteorologists. And, when it comes to war, we don't have access to the intel. We don't have access to all the information. And so there's a tendency just to outsource our what we think, because our opinions matter. You want to be on the right side of all this. And so we saw it in spades in the COVID era. Anyone who didn't toe the line, anyone who didn't parrot back the approved narrative was silenced, deplatformed, censored, slandered. It was disgusting. And now, if you speak out against gender ideology, you might even be physically attacked. The climate fiasco, we can't even measure. We can't tell to what degree the actions we take today, whether in 5 years from now, we won't know what impact they had. How can you manage something when you don't have the measurements in place? And the reason the measurements aren't in place is because weather and climate are simply too chaotic. And then finally, war. Who knows what to think? When the Germans attacked Poland, which was the event that started the Second World War, started the dominoes falling, because Poland had an alliance with the Western powers, with Great Britain and such, France. When the Germans attacked Poland, their pretext for that attack was a false flag operation that the Nazis concocted. They had German soldiers dress up as Polish soldiers. So they had their own soldiers put on uniforms of the Polish army, Polish soldiers. And then these Polish soldiers, or these Germans dressed as Poles, attacked a German radio station. You can verify that, look it up. It's historical record. And then the Nazi propaganda machine was able to proclaim to the German people that the Zavatoland has been attacked by Poland. And if you were a good German and you believed everything the government told you, why would they lie? Why would they lie? Why would Germany lie about Poland having attacked a radio station on the German-Polish border? Why? Because they had much bigger goals, a far bigger aim. And it's a similar aim to what we're seeing now. And, you bring up Nazi Germany and people tend to gloss over and go, "Oh, forget it." But it's nothing new. Franco's Spain, Mao's China, Soviet era Russia, Nazi Germany too. This stuff is old. And now the tools available are so much greater. So that's the end of my video. But you're not crazy. Don't get gaslit. I know speaking out is hard, and it strains relationships, and because people immediately put you into the bad camp. That's what they've been instructed. That's what they've been told to do. If you know someone who didn't agree with all the COVID stuff and who's not accepting of this new gender ideology, who's thinks the degree to which human activity impacts the climate is either negligible or non-existent, and if they don't support or not all in on doing whatever it takes to help the Ukrainians, they've been told to think of you as a bad person, and you are to be shunned, you are to be ridiculed, you are to be mocked, and it takes a very thick skin, and it takes something called ego integrity, and a lot of it, because swimming against the stream is difficult. And don't feel bad because you're feeling alienated. That's the goal. That is the goal. This is how authoritarianism, totalitarianism is easier to say than authoritarianism. That's how it rolls. That is how it rolls. And so those who are making you feel that way, they're doing what they've been programmed to do. And you're a rare individual who is able to have a spine. So stay strong. And as always, comments are welcome. Likes and shares, whatever you want to do. And we'll talk to you again. I'll end it off. I'll finish off by just saying there's a battle coming, but leaning on my faith, it's not a battle of this world. There is a spiritual war going on right now, and it is going to come to a head. And if you're placing your faith in powers of this world, you're going to be disappointed. There's only one king, the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, and that is Jesus Christ. And if you think it's JFK Jr., Donald Trump, Elon Musk, Pierre Poilievre, Maxime Bernier, or any politician, any public figure, any scientist, if you think someone's going to, no. This war, you don't even know, a lot of it can be like a wrestling match, scripted. All right, RFK, here's your talking points. You're going to be captain of the deplorables, to use I think that was a Hillary Clinton line. Well, or maybe Elon Musk or Donald Trump, who knows? Who knows? But any power of this earth that you're thinking is going to, this is a far deeper war. And to withstand it, I strongly recommend getting into the Word, talking to people, trying to connect with a good church. And they're not all good. They're not all good. Not all churches are good. Not all pastors are good. Not all Christians are good. Actually, we're all bad. We're all fallen creatures. But God's word never comes back void. So get into your Bible. I've gone on too long, almost 35 minutes. Have a good night. God bless. Probably have something in a few days. And we'll talk to you then. Good night.